Hello, everybody. Long gone, now back. This is Andreas, and with me is my good old friend.
Daniel.
Hey, yeah,
That music is so terrible.
it's awesome.
I just started cracking up as soon as that music started.
You can
Anyways,
always
how are
propose a new
you?
music theme. That's fine.
How are you, my gummy bearchen?
Oh, everything is awesome. So yeah, we had a little break because of reasons. Just nobody had time for that, basically.
Well, we retired and we were brought out of retirement by all of our fans, demanding a new episode. So,
Yeah.
to all our fans, both of you,
Oh, we have two now.
we're
That's great.
back.
That's awesome. So we raised the fan group by 100%. This is going through the roof here.
Yeah.
No, but we had a meeting. What was it? Last week? Or this week?
Yeah.
And
Like 2 days
to
ago.
yeah, 2 days
No, three
ago.
days ago. 2 days ago. Yeah.
To again going out with all this coronavirus still going on, but now you have a little bit of more freedom and could eat something. And then we had a little conversation and said like, we should maybe come back to that and miss that time to talk. And so we doing something against that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as always, we had a lot of preparation for this episode. So Daniel came up with a new topic. Basically, what was it? 5 minutes ago. Maybe you want to introduce everybody to what's the topic today?
Yeah. So, I don't know if everyone's been keeping track of the news, but basically, shit's insane. Oh, sorry. We're not supposed to curse on this feed, right?
It doesn't
Anyway,
matter. We
stuff is
don't.
insane in Texas right now. So a lot of people have been pinging me, yo, you moved to Germany. How do I do that? Right. So maybe that's a topic.
That's
I don't know
definitely.
if there's any interested in that, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. This is just actually just like an excuse for Andy and I to like shoot the shoot the crap, and then we record it so we can listen to it 10 years from now and just like, oh, who are these two idiots?
Yeah, but what I like about this, or it's a very interesting yeah origin in terms of like so there is a little bit of change going on in Texas, and like the first reaction of your friends is basically like, "Hey, guy, how do I move to Germany
Or Europe,
or
you
Europe?"
know.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, it's either Germany or like Europe and stuff. But I'm surprised at how many people like think of Germany as a destination. Like, I mean, I ended up in Germany by accident. Like Germany wasn't the first location I was thinking of. And also the first time I was in Europe, the situation is quite different from now. Like completely different geopolitics, completely different relationship between, the United States and Germany, completely different transatlantic, feelings on both aisles and stuff. So I don't know how much of it will pertain to anybody, but we can do it.
yeah. So I cannot help. Obviously, I cannot help a lot in terms of what do you have to do when you move from the US to Germany. There is basically, and I'm not sure if Daniel can help with that as well. So, but um, yeah, but I can. What I can talk about a little bit is maybe especially in the beginning and what might be some traps waiting for you here, or
Well, I mean, another way to think about it or look at it is maybe you were looking on the outside at me, like which parts did you see me struggle with? So
the
I'd be
language.
interested in.
Done.
Nein, nein. Ich habe so viel Deutsch.
Yeah, yeah, awesome German. It's very funny how resistant some people are to in learning the language. And also one thing that I really like, that I really love, and is I heard that word from you as well, and now you use a different one because that's very interesting for me. Normally, like American people migrating to Germany or whatever country, doesn't matter.
Uh-huh.
Normally, they are not migrating and they are not migrants. They are expats. It's a fancy new word they just made up to not be migrants.
I don't think we made it up. I think like the English made it up, and basically we're like, oh, that sounds fancy.
Yeah,
It's English.
it's the same group of people.
Yeah, yeah,
British, American.
yeah. We're exactly alike.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So actually, what do you have to do? So Daniel, enlighten us. What is the was it difficult for you, or you just basically because I think you always moved work related, right?
Yeah and no. I mean, maybe I share a little bit of my background, right? So I was working at a startup in Austin, but one of our customers was this company in Italy. And so just decided to fly to Italy to go hang out with my customers, right? And as an American who had never been out of America before, I basically didn't know anything, right? So I actually ended up overstaying my visa, becoming like, in general, I guess, an illegal immigrant, right? And then just hanging out there. Yeah, because I had like no idea you're supposed to like register, and I was like, I'm American, I can travel anywhere I want to, you know. And at the time, it was kind of true, right? Like I remember like crossing the border, and the border guard was like, "You do realize you overstayed your visa?" And I was like, I don't know. I don't know any of the rules." And then basically he was like guiding me on how to like get around it. Are you sure you didn't step in at least one day into another Shenzhen country? I was like, sure. And then it was like, then it's fine then, right? And just like waved me in, right? I think that would go differently now because this was a long time ago, right?
Maybe.
And so after a while, I was living in Italy for a while, and then on a whim, like I said, just by accident, I just decided to come to Germany, right? Um, Ended up like
This was
meeting
your
this girl.
first visit in Germany, right?
Yeah,
Just
this was like in like 2004 ish, probably.
so you had to do something for that, in terms of like you were in Italy now. I guess you had a visa or something. I think you worked it up afterwards, or were you still on a tourist visa, just
Nah,
hopping?
I was still on a tourist visa, honestly speaking. I mean, because I was like working, I was doing my startup, right? So I didn't know you needed anything more than that, right? Because like my whole opinion was like, all of our money is coming into the U.S. It's a U.S. company. I'm basically just here. I'm not really working. I'm just hanging out, networking. You know.
So you basically the example of like how not to do it.
Yes, yes. So basically, don't like whatever I say. If you just do the opposite, you're probably good, right?
In the end, no, if it works, it's not stupid. So
So like yeah, so I met this girl, right? She ended up becoming my wife later, right? But yeah, and then I was like in Germany, and then she was like, you're basically an illegal immigrant, right? And I was like, no, I'm American. How can I be an illegal immigrant,
but
right?
didn't you change your employer at that point before? So or were you
Yeah, kind of.
and they didn't bother to ask all that didn't matter, or because also what I know is normally like a tourist visa don't gives you the permission to work. I think that's the same in the
No,
US
but I
as it
like
is here.
created some like GmbHs and LLCs, and I don't know. I just paid this company to like make it happen, right?
Okay,
So they
we
just
have
made
to
it
be a little
happen.
bit careful at this place, or some lawyer might call Don Daniel about stuff that happened at that time. Uh,
Well, I mean, so very soon, my girlfriend, future wife, basically told me, is like, you need to get this papered over, right? Like this doesn't work, right? So I was like, okay, well,
that
what do I do? Like, it's not like I'm doing it on purpose. It's just like I'm basically illiterate and in this society, right? Like I can't speak the language. I can't read, write, speak. So, you know,
yeah,
if I'm breaking the law, it's only because I'm stupid, right?
also to wrap up the story, maybe it might be interesting to know where your wife worked at that time.
Yeah, she worked at the zoo, you know.
Yeah, so
Well,
she
she was a
had some
girlfriend at the
knowledge
time.
about. So
Yeah,
basically,
yeah.
she was doing her job.
Yeah, so basically she just like grabbed my hand and said like, no, we need to go to the Ausländer Behörde and stuff, right? So we did that, right? Um, I basically explained my situation and said like, so yo, how do I get like legal and stuff, right? And then after they gave me you know, the shaking of the head and the sigh and the whole like, ah, dumb American, you know, shtick. They basically said you can become a freelancer. And I was like, okay, that sounds cool. What do I have to do? It was basically nothing. She just gave me a freelancer visa, right? And so that was like the first time I
Mm.
was in Germany, right? Ended up marrying that girl, moving to the U.S. And look, at the time, the U.S. and Germany had a very, very different relationship.
But that was also so. Then with these freelancer visa, you had a work permit. Was that
I guess. I hope so.
okay? Maybe we should ask a lawyer. So,
Yeah, I
but
mean, I
but but
guess.
but you went back, so nothing happened. So that was the first time in let's say Europe and also Germany. So Italy, basically all
Well,
tourist.
this is how ignorant I was about like, cross-border visas and stuff, right? So like, we decided to move back to the US, right? And so I just booked the tickets. And then like I was like, "Oh, congratulations, we got our tickets to the US." And my wife was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Well, you said we wanted to move to the US, so I booked some tickets, I think for like next month or something." And she was like, "What about my visa?" I was like, "You're married to me. Like, to just let you in." And she's like, "No, dude, that's not how it works, right?" So what actually ended up happening is I had to go back to the US. She had
Alone.
to like hang out
Okay.
here
Yeah.
in Germany for a while to like go get her green card. That was like my first clue to think, all right, international immigration isn't just flying somewhere with your Amex, right? There's some rules to
Yep.
follow,
But
right?
basically, what you just told is like, let's talk about that because also that's very important for the, I think, the view on other countries on Germany, which is, as I know now, there are a lot of positive things, but also some negative things in terms of like very highly organized, but also a little bit bureaucratical and stuff. But let's wrap that up. So you could come into Germany. They just shake their head and said like, okay, this guy's just lost. We help him, make it possible that he works here. But when you wanted to get your wife into the US, she had to wait.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah,
just
that
wanted
was a
to point
surprising
that
thing.
out. Just wanted to point it out.
But I will say the U.S. was a lot more organized on the steps, right? Because one of the reasons why it took my wife to I guess do all the paperwork was depending on which city's Ausländerbehörde I was speaking to, they would tell me completely different things, right? So some cities actually gave me the outright hostility of like, why are you here, right? But like some other cities, I guess larger cities, that they were completely fine, right? So I think the experience of moving to the U.S. was a lot more paperwork driven, a lot more process driven, but at the same time, it was just a lot more documented and consistent.
Is it in the US? That would be interesting because I think Tineke did it from Germany. So she was
Mm-hmm.
here and did all the paperwork from here. So I think
Mm-hmm.
then it's a
Just goes through Frankfurt. Yeah,
it's a federal process, right? So
that's right.
it's not a state process, but it's I think
But it
it's
seems like it's a city process here.
yeah, that's what I said. It might be different because you were already here. So
Mm-hmm.
normally the person you talk to is the closest to you. So it's citywide, and like people are all a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
They have a little bit different ideas and maybe also a little bit different races. I don't know. So, but
What was
if
interesting is obviously the second time, like like now, I followed all the rules, right? So this time around, I went to the German embassy in Houston. They started the process. That was, relatively straightforward and easy. But the interesting thing was they only did half the process, right? So they only carried the process enough for me to like come into Germany, and I had to finish, in Germany with whatever Ausländerbehörde that, you know, I was living near.
So you're also sure that it was that way, or because another way I could imagine that, because I know you a little bit right now, that they tried to do the whole process with you, but you didn't care enough and you missed a lot of documents, and they said like, it doesn't matter, just come in now. We don't want to bother with that now, or don't kill your timeline. Just come in, and then we can fix the rest later.
I mean, if it was just me, that's probably what happened. But my wife was driving most of this
Yeah,
process.
you're right. So she would be
So,
correct about that. She's German.
so
So, but
to
then
all
it
the
was
Americans who
all
wanna,
done right. So you had completely paperwork done, all this stuff.
yeah, I mean, yes and no, right? So at first it was kind of a pain, right? Because we landed in a small city, so we went through the process there, right? Basically, it was taking forever. So we decided to move to Cologne, and then once we moved to Cologne, it became easy peasy, right? So I think it really depends on how used to they are of dealing with us dirty foreigners, right?
Do you know
And
what conditions you moved to Germany? Because I'm not an expert, and I guess you are also not. But what I know about the US is that there are different kinds of visa. There are some are work related, some are student visas, some are like the real like the migration stuff in terms of like.
I started off with a blue card process, but then we discovered like actually it's better if I come in as family reunion. So it's family reunion is my visa.
Okay, so basically you did it through marriage.
Hmm.
So go. That's the first tip for all your friends. Marriage.
Get married.
Yeah,
Yeah, get married to a German.
that's I think that's also in the US might be the easiest way in right now.
Probably. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know if this is gonna help anyone. You know, it's like I want to move to Germany. Get married.
No, and also this is something that like everybody would listen, and also you can forward this podcast to your friends, but especially like I think our recommendation would be if you really want to do that, talk to somebody who knows shit about it. So, like, talk to a lawyer. I think there are plenty of good persons in the US you could talk to figure out this whole legal thing. So like what visas are available, what is possible, what paperwork do you have to do. But what we could discuss a little bit would be like, I mean, okay, now you had experience before. You cheated a little bit, so you were in Germany before, and also you had a wife moving with you. So I guess you just offloaded all these stuff to your wife when you didn't understand it.
Yeah, I mean, like the first time I was in Germany, I used you know, like a fully furnished apartment place, right? So probably overpaid for my apartment. So that was easy, right? The second time around, it was quite difficult finding a place to live, because I was coming in from the US. I figured like, yeah, get here, hang out in the hotel, for a little while, you know, walk a couple of neighborhoods,
Direct
take a week and get an
first
get an
interesting
apartment.
question on that.
Hmm.
What did you bring with you, and would you do it again?
Oh yeah, I mean, what did I bring with me? Nothing really. My laptop.
I mean, you have two waves all the time. Like the first one is you coming here in an airplane. You have like what is it? One suitcase, two suitcases, whatever. I think closes,
Hmm.
but that's clear. But as I understood, you also had a shipment coming in with stuff because you had a
That's
whole
right.
house and lived in the US, so you brought some stuff over. What did you decide to bring?
I mean, everything. If I had to do it over again, I would bring nothing. All right. Like it was one, it was just way too much stuff because houses are bigger in the US.
Yeah, that's right.
Um, none of the appliances work, right? Um,
But it was all
yeah,
like household stuff. Like you didn't
just
try to bring your car or stuff like that.
no, 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 no. We sold our car before we came. We got the moving service. We just packed everything up, got it like a year later.
Yeah, but that would also be my first recommendation for everybody, especially if we're talking about friends from Texas. Um, I know you have a
Just
pickup
sell
truck.
everything.
Yeah,
Yeah, just sell everything.
I just know you have a pickup truck, and I know the smallest one will be an F-150. So, and then going
Mm-hmm.
bigger and bigger. Just don't bring it here. There is a lot of reasons. First of all, our country is too small for that kind of car, and the second reason is the car regulation is a little bit different. So it's not totally off. We also use cars, but and also the F-150
If
for
you
example.
call it that.
Yeah, we also have F-150s driving on our roads. Yes, we have that, but it's a little bit different. So you have a little bit different regulations in terms of. So you would need to change your speed meter from miles to kilometers. You would need to change maybe lights in terms of what is it, light in the indicators and stuff like that, because there are other colors allowed in the US than in Germany. So it would take some work, money, and I think you would also need a what we call a TÜV certificate. So you need to go actually to a place where you have to show your car every 2 years or every 3 years. Um, and they will say if you are still allowed to drive, if it's still safe. So
Mm-hmm.
it's there is no value in bringing your car over. Just sell it there and then buy something different here.
Yeah, yeah, that's very much true. That's very much true because I mean, in the U.S., your car is probably going to be gasoline. You know, here it's like mainly diesel, and I guess you have some gas pumps too. But most of the cars I see are
My car is
diesel or
gasoline,
electric.
so don't make us sound like a third world country. So we have both. I have a gasoline car. That's yes, we have more diesels, I think, than the US has diesels, but every pump also has a gasoline pump and a diesel pump, so that's not the problem.
Yeah. No, I mean like the hardest thing is actually finding an apartment. The finding an apartment is crazy in Germany.
So you moved
I hear
with
it's.
your in-laws, as I understood, when you came here. So you
Mhm.
had basically a base of operations, and then didn't you didn't prepare anything beforehand. You just said like, okay, we go in there with the in-laws, and then we find out how to manage that from
Mhm.
here, right?
And then before we moved to Cologne, we got like an Airbnb in Cologne for a little while just to explore the city, try to figure out where to live.
But at
You
that
know.
moment, so you didn't had a house at that or something to live, but you just said like, okay, let's try to find an Airbnb, and then so even move the base of operations from the in-laws house to closer to where we want to live.
Mm,
Okay,
because driving was stressing me out. So
how long did this take you? This time frame in an Airbnb?
probably like 2 weeks.
Oh, okay, but you so you didn't have anything. You came here, then you made the visitings of housing and stuff like that, and 2 weeks later you had one, the flat.
No, 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 no. We had to move back into the in-laws' place for a while.
Ah, okay.
That was the original plan. It's like, let's just move out, get an Airbnb for like 2 weeks, and find an apartment. That's not gonna work. Yeah, it was probably another 3 months before we found a place.
Okay. So that would be the next advice for everybody out there. Doesn't matter if you want to do it beforehand, or also there are some relocation companies, I guess you could ask for help that would do some preparation um, before you actually come to the country. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but don't expect it to be like, yeah, I'm just going there, booking an hotel room, we find something, especially if you go into
Mm.
big cities like Munich, Hamburg, Berlin, Cologne, or even Frankfurt, which I guess are the first centers of interest
Oh,
for immigrants. Yeah.
another warning to my American friends: when you rent an apartment, you're just renting the apartment. There's no like counters or cabinets or lights. There's at least toilets, but
Yeah. Yeah, right.
there's
Yeah,
nothing.
exactly.
You gotta
So
you gotta buy that your stuff yourself.
also no kitchen. Very important, no
No
kitchen.
kitchen.
So it changes right now. Some apartments have kitchens, but don't be too surprised if they want to have money separately for the kitchen. Because the default way in Germany, if you rent a flat or something like that, even if you rent a house, doesn't matter. It's just basically the walls. Like in the US, it's what was it called from my Texas real estate training. I learned that is everything that is connected to the wall is basically part of the house.
That's right.
So kitchens, lightings, these fans. You, if you move out of a rental apartment here, you would take all of that stuff with you. Possibly, you don't even have lights if you arrive there.
I mean, honestly speaking, at least for most of the apartments I've rented in the US, like it came with like washer dryer, it came with a refrigerator, microwave, not just like the kitchen, but fully stocked, right?
Yeah.
What would be considered here fully furnished, as opposed to fully furnished in the US usually refers to like it has a couch and rugs and is already decorated.
Yeah, but that's the same for us as well. So you have two different options. You have the normal rental market. That
Mm-hmm.
then it's, but it's also important. It's also the same for buying, of course. If you buy a house, it comes normally in the same condition, so it's also stripped down, and then you can build it up like you want. But with a rental apartment, normally you could move in directly, but there is nothing in it. So the walls are finished, the floor is finished, everything is renewed if needed. So they would have painted it. Also, that I know Texans have a little bit more colorful houses inside and outside. Don't be surprised.
Accent walls.
Yeah, it's white. So that's
Yeah, yeah.
that's it. So that's basically the common understanding. So nobody is hurt with white. So nobody is painting the wall yellow and stuff like that. It's all, or if they do, they normally paint it over with white when they leave. So to leave it for the next
Well,
one.
I think the difference is the lease contracts are structured differently, right? So usually in the US, it's like 1 year, maybe a 2 year lease, right? And so it renews every single year, right? You have to renegotiate that every single year, right? Yeah, here in Germany, it's basically an unlimited contract. Like, you know, besides some very specific defined conditions, you can kind of stay at your apartment forever,
Yeah,
right?
that's also a reason because like we talked about that also 2 days ago. Germany has a or very low, but it's compared to the US, it's a very low rate of people living in their own houses. So we are, I think, in majority a rental country. So a lot of people that you meet here in Germany live in a rental flat or rental house.
How many years have you been in your flat right now?
Oh, you're asking me stuff I'm not actually knowing. 7 years, 8 years,
Ooh, yeah, rough. Yeah.
something about that. So and that's the second one that I have. So therefore the regulations a little bit different, also according to renovations and stuff like that. So as I understand, in the US, you can also rent out a quite rough apartment and then you just put in the work and maybe even get a.
That's rare.
It's rare.
That's rare. Yeah.
So in Germany, normally if you take it over, it is fully renovated. So it is
Mm-hmm.
clean, fresh, everything's fine. So you can move in from day one, but no furnitures, no kitchen. Like I said,
And
worst.
by kitchen, they mean like countertops and like stoves, like no stove, no countertops,
Nope,
no cabinets,
nope. It's a
no
wall
closets.
where all the connections come out from. So where you can connect everything, but it's a wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very important. Yeah, so you have to. But so that's the same for every German. When we moved, I can remember that when I moved out of my mom's house with my first girlfriend, um, who's also actually my wife now. So we had to eat basically like roughly 3 months out of a microwave and delivery
Oh
services
yeah.
because we were waiting for our kitchen. Never want to experience that again. It was a horrible time.
Yeah. I mean, it took so long for stuff to come in from the US that basically like we just bought everything again. So by the time it came, that's one of the reasons why in my house right now I've got like two of everything, right? Like the German version and like the American version. So I just got
So,
like
what
a
would
whole
your
bunch of stuff.
recommendation? What would your recommendation be if you think about that again now? So you said already nothing, but maybe you think about that again. It's like, is there anything that you said like that would be good to take over from the United States, for example, because we don't have it in that here, or you missing it in the right now, and you would love to have an American version of it?
No, you just everything that you need you can buy here, right? You might have to pay a premium to like what you expect from the US, but I mean the I mean no, just sell everything, right? So all right, just like a normal basis, right? So I don't know, let's say you're a young couple, right? And you're living in a house in Texas, right? So probably your house is, I don't know, maybe 1,200 square feet, 1,400 square feet, 1,600 square feet, something like that, right? So somewhere around 150 square meters or something like that, right? That's considered a pretty big place here in Germany. So you're probably going to move into someplace smaller, right? So you're not going to have like the bonus room. You're not going to have like, you know, as much space or, like I said, any storage, right? So just sell everything, right? The only thing I would take is a tortilla press because the tortilla press was expensive. But everything else, just leave, you know. Just take a suitcase, fill it up with some clothes for a few days, not even your full wardrobe, right? Because, you know, people dress differently over here as well, right? And if you buy like winter clothes in Texas, it's just not going to work in Germany, right? That was one of the things my wife complained about, that like every like winter coat she brought over from Texas back into Germany, they just were not sufficient for German winters, right?
Yeah, we define winter differently. But I think
Yeah,
that
yeah,
that's
yeah.
even an in US thing, right? If you live, I think you should be aware of that. If you live in Texas, that's quite far south, so you have. I mean, you recognize that it's warm there a lot of times. So even in the US, if you go north, you have the same problem. So
Yeah,
don't go with a winter coat of Texas to Minnesota in the winter. That doesn't make sense. It's just
yeah. But like now, you know, you can get everything that you need over here. So, and honestly speaking, it's cheaper here, anyways, right? So life is the cost of living, besides real estate, probably is much cheaper here in Germany, right? The food is cheaper, the appliances are cheaper, cars are not cheaper, gas is not cheaper, electricity is not cheaper, but like anything that you could buy, like a frying pan or a pot, is cheaper here, right? So what I would do is just sell everything, right? Try to come with as little stuff as possible. Make your way over to an Aldi, right? Go buy some stuff. Make sure you transfer over your Amazon Prime to Amazon Prime Germany. Buy like a portable induction stove for like 40 euros or 50 euros, and then you're like good, right?
okay. So
Just don't take anything.
okay, so compact light. Be aware
Mm-hmm.
that finding a flat can take some time, especially in big cities, and they might be a
Mm-hmm.
little bit different than what you expected at home. Now
Mm-hmm.
you're sitting in your empty flat, you're starting to buy stuff, and what was the? I think it's a little bit hard, but you went to Germany the first time. What was the thing that most irritated you about maybe the normal living conditions in Germany, where you said like, okay, that's strange.
Just how slow everything was, you know. Like I'll give you an example, right? So so like I said, when me and my wife moved back to the U.S., right? This was before our kids. I had to go before her while she waited on her green card, right? So I had to set everything up, right? So I just went to a realtor. I told them roughly what I was looking for. Like I got an apartment, I think like 2 days later. I moved in. It was empty, but you know, it had like all the kitchen stuff. So I basically, you know, called up the internet provider. I got internet the next day. Um, I used that internet to get onto IKEA, bought a bunch of stuff on IKEA. 2 days later, the stuff was delivered. Um, and then I was kind of good to go, right? Everything just kind of takes a little bit longer here. And I think it's because there's no demand for it to be faster, right? So like another example, right? So when I wanted to buy a car in the US, right? I just went to the dealership, right, in the morning. I said, I want to buy a car. Um, Test drove some cars, filled out a bunch of paperwork, and in the evening, I had a car, right? here in Germany, you kind of have to pre-order the car, and it takes a long time for the car to be built and sent to you, right? So
Yeah, you
you
have
need to
to.
buy.
I understand what you are pointing out here, but you have to differentiate a little bit about that because
Mm-hmm.
it's a little bit different on how these purchases are made. So you are able to get not completely the same experience because the paperwork takes a little bit longer. So normally you wouldn't be able to get it in the like going in the morning and the evening you have it. I think
Mm-hmm.
that wouldn't be possible in Germany, but I guess 2 or 3 days totally possible.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is you then have to buy a car that's basically on the ground of the retailer.
Yeah.
So, and that is not that, first of all, it's not that common in Germany because we guys are really crazy with cars. So, we also love to configure them to death. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
mine has red stitches and this and that, and no, I don't want that steering wheel, I want another one, and blah blah blah. So the normal way in Germany is actually like Daniel told, it's like you going there, you configure your car, you negotiate a price, and then it will get manufactured for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes, especially in the last years, it takes a long time, and it's gotten worse and worse with these in-demand fulfillment cycles everywhere. So basically,
Mm-hmm.
if somewhere a train stops, all of that delays for 2 weeks. But you can
I mean,
also,
if you take a,
yeah,
I was gonna say, if you take a random drive on a highway in Texas, you're gonna see like these mega, car dealerships, right? So in the
yeah,
case of my car, you know, I configured it just like you did. But the last step is they just basically found where a pre-existing car like that already
yeah,
exists.
exactly, yeah.
In my case, in San Antonio, and that's why it took like a few hours. It's
Yep.
like, okay, it'll take an hour for the car to drive from San Antonio to Austin, and
But that's
that was
basically
it.
what I
Right?
did now with my car that I own now. Because before I
Mm-hmm.
always had company cars, so they would get delivered over the company. That's a completely different way of doing it. But now I bought. It's not my first car, but it's first car since I have a little bit of money, and it
Mm-hmm.
cost more than $600. That's basically what I did. I went to the dealership. I said to him like, "This is what I want." I said like, "Yeah, okay, you will get it in 7 months." They're like, nope, that won't work because I will have to hand over my car to the employer in 2 months. So I needed a little bit earlier. And then basically we looked at what he has on stock.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I was lucky because uh, that's the biggest problem was, for example, if you try to buy German cars. Like what I said about configuration, that's totally true for German cars. But if you, for example, buy Asian cars, it's a little bit, yeah, they have less configuration possibilities. Normally they come in packages. You have 2 or 3 packages that you can buy, like leather seats, yes, big electronic system, yes, and that's it. And there you have also car dealers that tend to have a little bit more inventory on the ground. So that's what I did. I bought one of those cars. So I also could have it in 3 days. I didn't have the need for it, so I waited a little bit to get a little bit special discount and stuff like that. But you can do that. But then you are not as free as in the US in what your car looks like. And that's also that's just a room thing. So we don't store that many cars in Germany because we don't
Mm-hmm.
have like 500 acres parking lots.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it's totally true. You should be aware of that as well. So
I think that though, like most people who are moving to Europe are looking for a more authentic European experience. They want to live in the city center somewhere, the Altstadt, and just walk everywhere and stuff like that. And I mean, we did that too. Like, the first time I was living in Germany, I was living in the Altstadt or close to the Altstadt. The first time I moved to Cologne, I was living in the Innenstadt. You know, but after a while, especially with kids, you're just like, I want a suburban experience.
yeah.
I want a parking spot. So.
But also I think it's a very interesting point because I think I would point that out as one of the maybe biggest differences in terms how it works in Germany compared to the US is the whole transportation section.
Mm-hmm.
That's like what I experienced in Texas is basically either you have a car or you're very alone and sitting at home. This is a little bit different. Also, it depends in Germany in what area you live exactly.
Yeah. True.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just it seems that all my computer monitors froze. But you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So that depends a little bit in Germany, because if you live in a bigger city, it's a little bit more public transportation stuff like that. If you're in smaller cities, it's a little bit less. But even in smaller cities, you are always able to move around via bus at least. So there are actually connections, and I think compared to the US, there are many connections, like to from moving to from your city to another city or stuff like that, or from the corners of the city to the center or stuff like that. And
Hmm.
if you go to a big city like Berlin, Munich, Hamburg, or Cologne, it you live really inside the city. I think I would also say, especially in the beginning, you don't need a car at all. You can do
Hmm.
everything by foot, train, bus, which is also that is quite it's a quite different experience driving a bus here than driving a bus in the US. But
What I will
that's
say though is all of my friends who have moved from Europe to the United States and have moved back, they all moved back into the suburbs, right? Because that's one of the experiences they actually really enjoyed about the US is the suburb life, right?
yeah,
And the
sure.
same thing with my wife. At first, she's like totally anti-Speckgürtel, right? But after living in the U.S. for a while, she's like, it's actually a nice quality of living, right?
Yes, but even there, like I when I grown up in Germany, I was living in basically like also a suburb. It's a different town,
Mm-hmm.
but you would it is the metropole area of Cologne. Let's say it like
Mm-hmm.
that. And it's quite comparable to Austin, for example, because I think Cologne and Austin are, from the city standpoint, it's roughly the same inhabitants. Both are around a million. And then you
Mm-hmm.
have the metropole area, which is consisting out of smaller towns. So in the US, it's in Austin, it's Round Rock, Cedar Park, and all that stuff there around. And here it's like Wesseling, Brühl, and stuff like that. And I grow up in
Mm-hmm.
one of those towns, and even from there, let's compare times. I was able to walk, and I was also I was not in the inner city of my town. I was also in the outskirts there, like real suburb lifestyle. But I was
Mm-hmm. The
able to,
Speckgürtel of the Speckgürtel.
yeah, I was able to walk into the inner city to get a train,
Mm-hmm.
and then going to Cologne, really inside Cologne, let's say roughly about half an hour to 45 minutes. And I guess what I experienced from driving times, I don't know about, I know about Houston a little bit now, but I know a little bit about Houston, I know a little bit about Austin. I think we had some times where we just wanted to grab some food that take us that long. Like 30
Mm-hmm.
minutes is quite a normal driving time there if you want to go from the suburbs to somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Oh
So
yeah, I mean that's just one thing of like the change in mentality that you have to, take on in Germany, right? Like you said, like in the US, like it's like, oh, what do you want to do? Let's go out to eat. Yeah, let's drive 45 minutes across town into downtown, right? That's that's completely a reasonable expectation. But here it's just like, let's go eat in the Innenstadt. And the actual drive time is like maybe 15 minutes, and just like, meh, yeah, too much bother.
yeah, so that's
So
a huge difference. You should we can elaborate on that a little bit more in another episode, I guess, because that's I think transportation is a very interesting part of differences. But what I would be interested in, especially to hear from you, is like how did you experience people here? So what was the difference in mentality or people, or did you run into problems the first time you met Germans?
I think I'm still running into problems, you know. But I think it's a little bit easier because my own mentality has shifted. And I'll give you like a really stupid example, right? So, when you're in the US, you kind of assume that everything is possible or everything is allowed unless somebody tells you like, no, man, that's illegal, right? So you kind of think like, well, it's my house, my land. I'm going to build a pig farm there. And your neighbors have to come to you and say like, no, you can't build a pig farm in your backyard or something like that, right? The mentality I've adopted in Germany is basically nothing is allowed without some kind of permit. So that's why I ask a lot of dumb questions, I guess, of like, can you actually do that? And then like Andy says, of course. Why couldn't you do that? It's like, I don't know, because you need a license just to go golfing, right? So that's one mentality difference. But in the end, there are all right. So there are cultural differences, and depending on your own attitude, they can be good or bad things, right? So, like for example, the optimism, I would say, of Americans, right? When I first got to Germany, everyone just seemed so pessimistic all the time, right? But I've started to learn to appreciate that, right? In fact, I have a very hard time watching American TV shows now because like everyone is just so over the top and you know just everything is so awesome, right? And I'm like, it's not that awesome. Just
Yeah, that's the
hold your horses.
first filler word that I learned working with you is awesome. I never used the German counterpart in my life, I think. But it's like in a normal American sentence, it's like, oh, that's awesome.
Well, I mean, we we mean that authentically, right? Like for example, the first time I had a doner, right? It was like, yeah, this thing is awesome, right? You get a big lump of meat, you know, fatty with like bread and it's pretty tasty. So I did think it was awesome, but it just becomes more prosaic over time, right? So
Yeah, I think that's also if you watch other like people moving to especially to Germany, that everybody's complaining a little bit about that, or complaining or
well, let's compare and contrast your reactions when you were in Austin, right? So like the first time I
yeah.
was in Germany, right? Like you try new things and everything is awesome because it's like new, right? And I remember eating some stuff with you and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And you're just like, it's just a currywurst, man. Just hold your horses. And then the first time you were in the US, I tried to take you to all these restaurants and you're like, meh, it's all right. Meh, it's okay. But then later in time, you would say, I'm really craving that. Let's go get some of that, right? So I think like the first reaction, is in Germany is not cool to be too enthusiastic about stuff, right?
Uh, there are situations,
Maybe
but
I'm reading that wrong.
no, there are situations where it's okay, totally okay. But normally, I think I would translate that Germans they want to have a scale at first. So you come into another country, for example, for me it was 2019, the first time in the US, and then I went there and then I ate something like, yeah, that's fine. That's also comparable. And also I was not that, that risky with my food. I tried to pick on the first trip. I tried like, do I try this? Do I try? I don't know. I have to be careful. But if you have experienced some more stuff, then you can really use that stuff like, oh, this is awesome because I really like that, and this is like, yeah, that's okay, and that's the shit. Because you
Mm-hmm.
need your scale first. That's and
I
sometimes
mean,
I have the experience that Americans is like they experience something new and it's not bad. It's like it's awesome. It's great. It's like yeah,
yeah,
it's
it is,
okay.
right? Because like I mean, which human has an absolute scale of everything in the universe, right? So from the perspective of the individual, when they try something new, it is an awesome experience, right? So think about like how rare in the lifetime of human existence is it for an individual to like travel to the other side of the world and experience a dooner, right? That was unheard of until modern times. And still,
Hmm?
there are a lot of Americans in the world who have never had a dooner, right? And
Yeah,
so I feel
sure.
sorry for them.
No, but that's something you really should expect if you're coming here. So, especially people will look colder to you on first glimpse. I would say that because I think that it's not that they are colder or not as friendly as in the USA, but they have a different attitude towards it. And even in Germany, that differs a little bit. So Daniel
Mm-hmm.
already came to an area where is that's known for a little bit more open mindedness and a little bit more happiness. If you go to, especially for example, Hamburg, the Nordish area, it gets even a little bit colder there, so
Hmm.
it needs a little bit of time. But also, in that case, that's one of my examples. Well, I have two examples that they always come up in my mind when I think about these difference in mentality in Germany, and because you talked about rules and is it forbidden, is it
Uh,
allowed, and stuff like that. And the first thing I experienced that was in New York, actually. I'm obviously German. My wife is as well. We went to New York, and as crazy Europeans do, we did a lot of exploring on foot, and we understood that in New York that is okayish because a lot of people there do this as well. It's a very crazy town, I know. So we walked a lot, and then you have lights, pedestrian
uh-huh.
lights, and then they turned red, and we just immediately stopped. And then basically half New York was bumping into us from behind. It's like, why do you stop? It's like, yeah, it's turning red. It's like, yeah, that's just recommendation. Just go. So, and as I learned later on, that a New Yorker guy doesn't hate anything more than foreigners coming to his town and just standing on the paperwork and standing there and, and just blocking them. It's like, no, we have no time. Just move, move, move.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you could really see that. And now I was two times in New York, and the second time it was really cool because I could, with that knowledge, I could experience that. I could just stand outside the hotel room, smoked a little bit, and then I just watched people running. And it was quite near to Times Square, where also actually New Yorkers not that many are actually there, but you could really see
Uh-huh.
which people are from Europe countries, and even there, it's quite easy to spot the Germans because like you have exactly that situations, just stopping abruptly on a light signal, and then somebody's bumping into him. It's like, yeah, that's a German. It's red. It's-
I mean, I have to be careful with my words because it sounds like I'm saying that, oh, Germans are complainers and pessimistic and cold and Americans are not. This not what I mean. Like I really love German people and German culture and stuff. But like I have a funny anecdote from a friend of mine. He's also named Andy. He was also living in Germany and has recently moved back, right? And he sent out a newsletter basically speaking about this topic. And one of his funny observations, which I think are true, is he said Germans love complaining about other people
oh yeah,
or things, right? Um, and the funny part is what they usually complain about is how other Germans complain about too many things, right? And I just thought that was really, really funny because in my own experience, it's kind of true. Like Germans actually do complain a lot,
yeah,
right? But the funny thing is most of the time they're complaining about other Germans complaining a lot. So I just, you know, I
yeah.
don't know why I find that funny, but I do.
It's a professional level. So you complain about stuff, and if there is nothing to complain about, we have that in the summertime. Actually, I think I don't know if that is it's not that much anymore right now, but actually in the past it was always like the summertime is our Congress, if you want, is off there all on vacation, and normally in the newsletters on the newspapers, it's yeah, it's rough. There is no real big news. Everything's a little bit on hold, so especially in the last, and you always have some leisure stories then in that time, and there's also always some stupid stuff where like whole Germany uh, riots against something totally stupid. They also forget as soon as important topics come up, it's totally
Mm-hmm.
forgotten, but it's like, yeah, it's a filler. It's a little bit like there's nothing to do, so let's complain about that. And I
Yeah.
mean, you worked with me, so if I would come home from work one day and had nothing to complain to about my wife, it's like, why do I go to work? It doesn't make sense.
I think I would say that, and like there's another kind of like say difficulty in moving to Germany is we just talked about like how at first everything is novel, right? So everything is awesome, and that's okay because I mean this is gonna sound really stupid, but like in some ways in the U.S. everything is awesome, right? Or terrible, right? because of the whole society is built around that with like its marketing cycles and stuff, right? So if you go into like a grocery store, like every single week they're testing out new products. You go into a restaurant, even like a Taco Bell, and there's always some kind of special, like now introducing the mega Dorito sour cream chicken fried taco or like whatever, right? So you're constantly bombarded by novelty, or even if it's the same thing, it's at least positioned as novelty, right? And as a new immigrant into Germany, if you're from America, it's not like that, but you don't notice at first because at first, even like the normal things, like, going into, you know, a grocery store and only having three types of milk, right? Instead of 20 types of milk, there's that also is kind of awesome and novel. It's like, oh, that's so weird. That's so different. Oh, your eggs aren't refrigerated. How weird. Or, oh, your milk isn't refrigerated. How weird, right? But after a while, you start to settle in and you notice there is no novelty for a while, right? So you start to probably feel a little homesick of, you start to feel like, oh, I wish I could go to a food court. A food court would be so great. Like, there's 25 different food trucks over there. And
Yeah, I think
in the same trip, I can have like a lobster roll and Thai green curry.
I guess
But then you get used to it again.
that's a great
Go ahead.
point. Because I never thought about it like that, but I think you're totally right. Like Americans a little bit obsessed with novelty.
Yeah.
Also with what the food court, what you're talking about, that's the reason you have these food trucks.
Yeah.
Can come
Yeah.
up very quickly, can go, and then another one is coming. And Germany is in that direction a little bit more conservative. I would say it's like we have a saying here that relates to food, but it's was der Bauer nicht kennt, das frisst er nicht, which basically translates to what the farmer doesn't know, he doesn't eat.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit, yeah, a little bit of objection against new, which is basically the true conservative value. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's new. It has to prove at least. So the early adopters, at least 30% of that has to test that out, and if they don't die in large numbers, we might consider of thinking about that. So
And I think if you haven't been to the US, it's hard to imagine the scale of the constant stream of novelty, being blasted into your face, right? So like you could think like, okay, we have that in Berlin, right? You go into like, I don't know, what's that neighborhood that we always went to? Kreuzberg, right? It's like, yeah, it's a street. There's a lot of different types of restaurants. You walk through it. And then here in Cologne, you go into the, around Friesenplatz or Souls or something, and you have a lot of nice restaurants, right?
yeah,
But these are like special areas, right? At least in a city like Austin or San Francisco or New York. Just imagine like multiple square miles of this just constantly bombarding you, right? With variety and stuff, right? So
I
I
think
think at first or at least my reaction was a little bit of relief from that bombardment, but then you miss it a little bit. But if you stick it through, you start to appreciate the quietness of German life as well.
yeah, I guess there's
Or at least I
also
am.
there are also different reasons also for that because also what you have to compare is I mean okay, but you also already compared Austin to Cologne because that's from the size roughly the same, but especially a lot of other American cities that we mentioned, San Francisco, New York, I think even Houston or Dallas, for example, they are much larger. So I
Mm-hmm.
think the only city you can compare that to in Germany is Berlin. I think what Berlin has 4 million people living there or something like that. So
Mm-hmm.
basically that's the only big, really, really big city in comparison to United States big cities that we have, and I think they come closer to what you can see in the United States, and also from the mix of people, it's a lot more migrants there. So you have actually a scene of like migrants coming into the country and providing different kind of food, for example. I think
Mm-hmm.
huge spaces of Germany are very German. It's just
Well, yes
Germans
and no.
there.
Like I've nuanced my opinion about this, right? Because remember we had a previous conversation where I thought like Germany isn't very diverse, right? Even in the large cities, even in Cologne, like compared to the diversity that you see in a town like Austin or Houston, it's not very diverse, or that at least was my position, right? But then I thought about it a different way, right? So yes, if you measure diversity by like different ethnicities, different like food cuisines, different, ways that people look or dress or behave themselves, Germany is a lot more homogenized than in the United States. But if you go, let's say, one level deeper, the people who are diverse here in Germany are actually really diverse, as opposed to in the United States. Everyone's basically American at the end of the day, right? Like, even if they're not technically American, they've basically been subsumed into the American overculture, right? So, like, yeah, like they might serve tacos, right? They might put pineapples on their tacos, or they might put, other stuff. But at the end of the day, like everyone's basically American, right? As opposed to here, I've met people who are like, let's say, I wouldn't, I would never have the opportunity to talk to these people like in the United States, right? Like, for example, North Koreans or refugees from Afghanistan, who are actually sympathetic to the Taliban, right? Like no one in the United States would ever say like, yeah, maybe the Taliban have a legitimate right to rule, right? Here you do meet people like that, right? So the surface level diversity is less in Germany, but because of the size of Germany and the influx of, I don't know, maybe refugees or people who haven't been integrated, you do run into like very, very stark differences in worldviews, for example, right? Like basically, you can't survive in the US unless you're integrated. If you're not integrated in the US, you're going to have a very, very terrible time, right? As opposed to here, I think I'm living proof. Like you don't really have to integrate, you know.
Yeah, I think you integrated well. Just you missed that one thing that is the most obvious and like easiest to point out. That would also be my
Language,
yeah
it could be good.
that would be an advice to everybody who's thinking about moving here. It's like I know German is not the easiest language, and also there are a lot of prejudices against that. That's like a hard language that it's very, which is really not true. Like every language where you just
Is
yell
hard in their own way.
commands and do the angry Adolf Hitler speech is sounding quite harsh. You can do that with English as well, no problem. But in the
I mean,
normal,
it's not that I don't want to learn German. I'm just too dumb to learn German,
no, you
right?
don't
But I
want
can
to.
pick up phrases,
No,
right?
you're not too dumb.
So
You're just too lazy
so
and
basically, basically the way I communicate in Germany is like Bumblebee and Transformer, right? I just have these phrases that I interject and basically string these phrases together, right? Like I'm taking snippets from the radio. Right?
but that would be my advice to everybody that comes here is like don't be a Daniel. Try and that doesn't have to be perfect. And also the English level I think in Germany is quite good. So in a lot of areas
Nah,
you can survive with
no,
that. It is. You don't need to
no.
go into the deepest of hearts or something like that, but especially in cities, it's quite okay.
I think the only reason why I can survive in Germany is because like I'm so boring that once I have a few friends, I don't need to make any more social connections, right? Like that's the only reason. The reason why.
So let me
I will say though, the waiter from the other day thought I was the German speaker and thought you were the foreigners.
yeah, he was
So
very confused. That was awesome. Yeah, yeah,
my
yeah.
my recommendation for Americans is just learn some key phrases like "Guten Tag." If you can say that, they'll think he's German. So
Yeah, exactly. So
it was a great scene. So we sat down at the restaurant. I tried to be polite, so when the waiter came, I said "Guten Tag," and then basically for the rest of the night, he spoke German to me and English to Andy and our friend Fabian. So that was fun.
yeah, he was a confused guy. But let me close on another anecdote because I found it also very funny. They said like what you have to adore here is how slow everything is. I have a complete opposite, but it's a different area. But there I have a complete opposite experience and also reaction. And I think that would drive any normal German absolutely crazy. And so my recommendation for an American friend coming here and living for some time is the first thing you should do is go grocery shopping in Aldi and try to keep up with the speed if you go to the cash register, because that was something that irritated me hard in
Oh
the
yeah.
US. Just standing there at this cash register because I didn't know. We don't have that many self checkout stores, very few actually. So we actually have living persons sitting there, and then you go there. But it's very that is actually very stereotypically German. It's very efficient. So and especially Aldi is known for that.
It's stressful.
Yeah, on the one hand, like if you come from the US, I can imagine it's very stressful. If you come from Germany, and that was my first experience, I think it was in a Target or somewhere, and I went to that cash register, and it was just two people standing in front of me. In Germany, that means you are out here in no time. It's like, yeah, fine, two people. Why should I bother to go walk the aisle down the aisle where it's free? I can just stand here, and it took, from my feeling, hours to get out of that store. Then they started to talk about something. Then like, yeah, she had a problem with the bag. Then he came out of his little seat and helped her with the bags. Like, fuck, guy, come on, people are waiting. We want to get somewhere. His lucky day was I was on vacation, so I was a little bit more relaxed. But that was like the most horrible experience I ever had. So try that on a
Well,
German cash register, and I guess we don't have that many guns, but someone will pull one out on you and shoot you. That's quite sure.
different scaling strategies, right? So like, all right, you walk into a typical HEB or like Target, right? So the first of all, there's like 20 lines available, right? And I would say like 80% of them, if you go in like normal business hours, are staffed, right? Um, so yeah, maybe the interaction with the hello, how are you doing, and the people bagging your stuff for you is a little bit slower, but overall bandwidth of the store is still fairly high, right? You go into like a huge like Aldi or like Edeka over here, it's just as big of a store, right? Except they only have like four registers and only like one of those registers is open, right? And so you get this huge line. You're trying to check out, right? You have to bag your own groceries, right? So you know, unload everything onto the belt. You try to move as quickly as possible to the front because they're just going to start scanning and throwing your goods at you, right? And you're just trying to keep up of like, okay, grab the stuff, and then they of course finish scanning everything like 10 minutes before you're ready, and then they're just like demanding payment, right? So you have to like either just stand there, right, looking like a jerk, finish bagging up your stuff, or like, you know,
You should be finished
pay
by
right
then.
then. I never am, right? My I've developed a strategy which is I just don't try to bag at all, right? So I just like shove everything right back into my cart, and then I bag it myself, when I'm back at my car, right? Because I just can't keep up,
Yeah, that's the
right?
way you're
They
supposed to
scan
do it.
things so fast.
Yeah, that's the way you're supposed to do it. So I can, as like my final advice to everybody is like that. I think that's the cultural difference. Really, in a nutshell, is research a little bit about the experience that Walmart had when it tried to move to Germany. It was the biggest migration. It's not a people migration; it's a company migration. But it's, I think it could explain a lot of the confusions you would run into if you come to Germany, because they tried to use the American concept of a Walmart and to transport that over to Germany, and they failed miserably, like really hard fail. I think they lost millions, and then on some point they just said, "Okay, guys, we are out of this. That's crazy town here." So there's so much funny material out there in the internet, on YouTube, on documentations and stuff like that. Why did Walmart fail in Germany? And that was basically the root cause of that was exactly that. Never anybody from Walmart made their homework and tried to understand what is actually different in that country. They just thought like, okay, they are basically Americans that want to experience the Walmart style, and then they recognized, okay, they don't want to. And also a big part of that was, it's the most funny sentence I ever read on a YouTube video. It's basically Walmart came to Germany and then experienced that slavery is not allowed here, and then they went home. Because that's one of the
Yeah.
biggest reasons, like Daniel said, like we have just 4 cash registers maybe, or a German store might seem very understaffed for you. Because,
Oh, it's totally
yeah,
understaffed.
but that has reason, because we have to pay every employee at least the minimum wage, which is actually meaning something. So we don't have
Yeah.
people staying there for $1, greeting or packing bags and then hoping for getting some tips or stuff like that. That's not happening in a German company. So in some areas, maybe also, but we don't need to get into that right now. But especially in the supermarket place or stuff like that, it's
I mean, I think that's changing post-corona in the U.S. as well. Like a lot of businesses can't staff their people right now because a lot of people are just saying, you know what, like I just don't need this in my life for so little money, right?
yeah.
And actually, one more point for all my American friends wanting to move to Germany. A lot of you are doing so because you're dismayed at some of the, let's say, right-wing policies that are being enacted in Germany. I mean, sorry, in Texas, and the rest of the United States, and maybe you're tired of the polarization and the political environment, but also realize that Germany is a deeply conservative country, right? It doesn't appear that way on first glance, but it is a deeply conservative country. Um, unless you disagree with that.
Yeah, it's hard because I don't like these terms, especially in the comparison between like especially the term conservative. What does it really mean? I think it has a real big range of what the meaning of that word is. If you go to America, if you go to Germany, if you go in America to a right wing politics or Tea Party area, or even above that, or if you ask Democrats, or even I don't know if you even have a left wing politics actually running around somewhere.
Not really.
So the word conservative is used completely like in America, socialist is like a swear word. If you want to
Mm-hmm.
kill any politician, or like you tried with the in the presidential election now, it's always tried to get to blame somebody or label somebody as socialist, and then he's out because our socialist is bad, and that's different here. So the meaning of the word is completely different in some regards, and so therefore it's quite hard to yeah, to compare that. I would also say that Germany at its roots is quite conservative.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said before, it's a little bit more of waiting and seeing if something is really actually making its point. And we are not, let's say in the tech area, we'd say Germany is not an early adopter, not at all. So we have a lot of countries around us that we can test stuff out. And that's even actually true for German companies. A lot of German companies that try to do something new, they try out in markets next to Germany. Because also they are smaller, and so the risk is lower, especially Austria, Switzerland, Netherlands, or even now Poland and stuff like that. There is, especially in the tech area, there I think they are quick moving, much more quick moving than Germany. But Germany still has a lot of innovation power still, and also in the
Mm-hmm.
people. You can see that, for example, one of the examples that I always like is when Tesla came up. It was seen as like, okay, this is the new player that's so sexy, it's awesome, and how innovative they are, and they are light years ahead of everybody else. And that was true when they came out, but you see now how they are catching up. And I read a recent study about electronic cars, or just really just about electronic cars, and actual, yes, I know statistics get faked and all that stuff, but actually currently VW is again on top of that. So even above Tesla. Tesla wasn't even in the top three, and also Mercedes. Mercedes basically overtook them in terms of self-driving cars, so they are better now from them and stuff like that. And they have more patents going on and stuff like that. So there is a lot of power, but I guess you will never see, for example, a German company or a Tesla coming out of Germany. I guess that's quite unlikely.
Hmm.
So
No,
they,
I don't know. Maybe things are changing as well.
yeah.
I mean, let me flip the script on you. Like, you still want to move to the U.S.?
Eh, that depends on the circumstances. So I have obviously I have a very sweet spot for the US in my heart. There's a lot of things that I learned about the US in these 4 trips that I've done there now that also helped me understand these people better, and that's also maybe just a recommendation for everybody. If you even if you don't want to move to Germany, just visit us or visit Italy or visit somebody else. Doesn't matter. It helps a lot to understand, and it's much better than just watching news or even local news. That's the same for the US and in Germany. Reading
They can't.
German newspapers about the US, they are all biased. They have it's the same for the US. So go there, talk to people. So there's a lot I love about the US, but there's also and the US obviously has problems. I think any country has problems, but and I think there are some real tough decisions in front of US government, US people. I also see that split. Luckily for a tourist, it's not that bad, right? Or it was not before Corona, but even that, I talked to a friend of mine, which family had a flat in Florida for a long, long time, many years. And he even said that currently he's not traveling to the US because he has this view like 15 years before, 20 years before. And so like, he is feeling that shift. He's seeing that they were more open minded. That it was easier to talk to them. That also about political topics, this is currently basically a no go. You don't talk about that at all because it just ends up in riots and stuff like that. So, but you see that in Germany as well a little bit. So the positions get a little bit harder. Um, People, it's harder for them to connect and to talk about stuff without a dogmatic view of something. So just like, okay, what's your opinion on that? Let's discuss that. Why is it? Where are you coming from? Why is this your opinion? Um, for example, one stereotype that we have about it, especially Texas. So like it's also a little bit like Germany, Bavaria, and Germany is a little bit the model Germany for the US. I think a lot of Germans see Texas, and not even Texas, but movie Texas, I would call it, as the model for the US. So basically, everybody's riding on a horse, has boots, has a hat. Everybody has a gun. Okay, that's true, but they don't have horses. They have pickups and stuff like that. So, but for me, I understood so many things about also Texas and Texan people when I was there. Also, when I first saw like the not even the Ford 150, but the bigger one, the 250 or 450
250,
even.
a 250 dually.
Yeah, I guess it was something like that. It's like that's a crazy car. Why on earth would anyone build a car like that? Because in Germany you couldn't even get on a normal road with that. I think it's too wide for a normal road in Germany. You would always bump into problems. But when I saw Texas, like, okay, it's an open land. It's like takes you 9 hours to drive from one corner to another or something like that, and you have huge land that you own that you have to transport stuff over. And I get, yeah, okay, that makes sense here. That makes total sense here. And then I came to San Francisco, for example, which is even in the US completely opposite. Like they don't have that space. It's also very narrow there. You have old buildings, and then in the first time in my life in the US, I saw European parking houses, which is a no go in Texas. It's just like, okay, we do 5 acres more of parking lots in that direction. It's like no
Yeah.
problem, and that's totally different here. So, but you understand where they're coming from, or why they build houses out of wood instead of stone. What we do here mostly. Why? It's also one of the reasons why they are more expensive in Germany. But that doesn't make them better necessarily. It depends on what problem do you want to solve, where do you live. It's different to live in Texas than in Cologne or in Hamburg. You have different
Yeah.
needs for your house. You have different needs for stuff. So, and I like the positivity about America. Yeah, I like that very much. I also have
Does your
some.
wife though?
Even my wife, like she is very yeah, very classic German in that way. So
Hmm.
I wouldn't use the word negative, but she's opposing a lot of new stuff or changes or something like that. But even she, and
I just
in the US, she was much more open, much more.
yeah, I just find it funny that you're irritating her with Abenteuer.
Yeah, yeah. So I took over some of the Daniel's aspects into my life because that's actually the outcome of that. So Daniel was the first real American that I get to know closer. I always had a sweet spot for the US, and then but through him, I also get the okay, travel to the US and stuff like that. And yes, that's what you do. And then you see some stuff that he does, and you say, like, no, that's just plain stupid. You will never do that. But you also can see other stuff where you say, like, that makes sense. And that's what I mean. It's like, it's not totally bad or totally good. It's different. And some things, if you learn them, they might improve your life, and some things you don't want it, and that's something I would wish for everybody to like ease up a little bit and then just like sit together or talk. And therefore, yeah, I would do that. Like I said, I would move to the US. It depends a little bit. I'm 40 now, so not the youngest anymore. But
Yeah,
it,
but you don't have any kids. You could just go and
yeah,
have a grosse Abenteuer.
yeah, I would do that. I would actually do that, and I think to give me a little bit of ease, I would first time I would tell myself, and I want an external person to tell myself this is just for a year or this is
Hmm.
just for 2 years. I don't know how that would evolve or stuff like that, but that would at least help, and I would need some security behind that because that's something we didn't talk about in today's episode, but that's also another topic for itself. It's like healthcare system and stuff like that. There are a lot of things I could be afraid of coming from Germany with my social net here in the US, that I would like to see covered before doing that step. Because I think one thing that we could agree on, if you're getting poor or you get into financial trouble in the US, that's not a funny thing.
Yeah, don't be poor in the U.S.
So, and also, there is the question of I would have to do it right. I wouldn't go there on a tourism visa and then try to work there. I,
What? That's just indicative of like how my own attitudes have changed. 2004. What is it? What is that like? 17 years ago. I'm just like a dumb kid, right? And I'm just like, sure, why not? You just go and
yeah, but
you don't even think like it could run into problems, like it might be illegal or whatever. Like
yep, but
the whole
honestly,
concept of like registering which city you lived was completely foreign for me,
yeah, but
right? It's just like,
honestly, I like that. That's also a little bit the attitude of, or it shows a little bit of these American, like maybe on some points even childish, optimistic worldview. And what I really
mm-hmm.
don't like, especially right now about the US, is that that's the first thing that has been sacrificed. So currently, it's
Maybe.
more like if you're going there, and I experienced that myself. So like we had a tourism visa, we had all that stuff. Everything was fine. So there was, but you worry. You
Yeah.
land at JFK and you worry. You are not excited for a short time. Like not all the time. It's like, but for the short time frame, especially when you land, you try to get out of your plane, you try to get to the immigration officer, and you try to get past him. You are afraid,
Mm-hmm.
and you're sitting there and saying like, "Oh, hopefully he let me." And you hear the craziest story about he can decide everything. It doesn't matter if your paperwork checks out. If he has a bad day and he doesn't like you, or you give a bad answer, you would be sent back and stuff like that. That's some kind of the impression that we have right now. I don't have that experience with any migration officer. I have to tell as well. Was always very nice, very very good. But that's a little bit the I would say the foreign picture of America right now. It seems to
Mm-hmm.
be a country that's very afraid of everything, and so is playing the hard guy and makes other people also very afraid. And that's something I would love to have that, and therefore I would also encourage everybody that said like I want to go to Germany. Just try it, Just do it. Even if you do stupid mistakes, you will learn out of them. And I would laugh that a country would react like that. It's like basically you run up to them and like, sorry, I was here. I didn't know. I was on a tourism visa. I was working for 5 years now. Can we do something? And I say like, okay. I don't treat you like a criminal, but like, okay, that was a bad thing to do, but let's figure out how to solve that now. And maybe you have to pay taxes and stuff like that, or everything's fine. Everything's great. But I think currently that situation is not there. I would be a
I think
little bit
that's.
afraid.
I think I agree with that assessment. Here in Germany, I'm never treated as a criminal. I'm only treated as an idiot. So, as opposed to maybe in the US, sometimes you might be first, you know, it might first ask whether you're a criminal or not, right?
So I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to that. Corona has to end sometime. So, Mr. Biden,
It's
if you're
never gonna
listening to
end.
our podcast, which I absolutely believe you will do, just open up that wall. So I have no idea why there is still these European travel ban. It's just ridiculously stupid right now. It's fine for this year, but next year I want to come back. So uh, let's do that. Let's travel.
Yeah.
Let's meet other people. Let's talk a little bit and see that we are not that different and we can learn something from each other.
What a positive attitude. I love it.
It worked for me so far. So yeah, and now we have, I guess, broke the record for longest podcast that we have done so far. So therefore, we should stop right now.
Is this the longest? No way.
I
We've like
guess.
talked like 4 or 5 hours before.
Yes, but not on record. Because that's actually also a sneak peek maybe for if we can keep up with the mood and say like, okay, we continue this. There is also another topic that's the length of the podcast.
Oh, we have to do it for all of our fans. Sarah, this one's for you.
Yeah, you see what a little bit of positive feedback can do. So
Yeah.
oh no, it's not the longest. The first one was the longest right now. So let's stop here so we keep the record for the longest to the first one.
All right. Till
So
next time.
yeah, so let's see if Daniel and I can figure out how to keep that project running on a more stable basis. Maybe we have a dual fix on a weekly basis. So because we figured out that we old people can just do this stuff with dual fixes.
Yeah.
But
For my American friends, that just means something on a schedule.
yeah, weekly
It's French.
appointment.
It's fancy.
Yes. It's not fancy for us because we live next to them. That's not that fancy.
Ooh la la, jour fix. I'm gonna have some champagne at my jour fix. Except in Germany, they call champagne shampoo for shampoos. I was like, shampoos.
So, okay, then we and also shout out to everybody who listens to that. Daniel will send this to all of his friends who asked him. So I expect some visits from Texas,
Yeah,
hopefully.
all one of you.
If you have some more questions, just feel free to ask. If you don't believe Daniel, because he's narrow-minded, you can also ask me. Tell
Yeah.
you how awesome everything is here. So, and then have a good night and
Choose.
goodbye, everybody.